So we were ordered to go out from the town. The SS were standing around us and urging us to go faster, and we all that image, this image stayed with me very, very alive. Even now, it is now close to 70 years. Mothers with children, old people, handicapped, everyone, the whole mass of people moving towards the River Seine, not knowing what will happen there either. One soldier came to my father and urging him, before he could answer, he knocked him down with the bayonet which he had. And it was a frightful scene when things, and we came to the River Seine, and there we were searched for all valuables, and they were taken away from us, which and from then on we marched to across the River Seine, which was at that time, the other side of the Seine was a no man's land. At this particular occasion, later on, the German came over and they took that as well. But at that time, it was a lawless part of Poland at this occasion. And there we experienced a lot of hardship. And to tell the long story will take long, but we were then faced with robbers which wanted to rob us, and we escaped just with our life, barely escaped our life, and also found some refuge at one point in an inn, in a mob of people were wanting to lynch us and take away whatever little bit which we had. But when with a lot of hardship we managed to get to the border, get to border where the Russians were there, and that's where we were aiming at. So over there, we didn't have either piece. They loaded us also in boxcars, and they transported us to Siberia. And then eventually we got free, and after a year and a half in Siberia, because the war broke out between Russia and Germany, we came we traveled to Central Asia, a town called Samarkand, which is in Uzbekistan. There we experienced a lot of starvation, epidemics, and people were dying in the streets because of the epidemics and starvation. My mother died, which was a great shock for me. I was then only just barely 13, and it brought a lot of hardship into my inner soul. And eventually we were taken into an orphanage, a Polish orphanage, and they and we managed to get out from Soviet Union into the Caspian Sea to Iran. In Iran, we were taken in by Jewish agency into a camp which gathered all the Jewish orphans together, and there I became very sick that I was actually barely. I couldn't eat. I had bones and I think it's called a sickness. I'm not 100% sure. It's called pellagra. Everything which I ate had to dispose straight away. So to make this story short, we managed to get out from there as well, and through because to go to Palestine at the time. Now we are in the end of the year 42, and we couldn't go through Iraq, and so we went to India, with a military convoy of ships, and to the Red Sea. Arrived in Palestine in 43, February 43. Firstly, I was 13, 14, and I was taken in agriculture school called Mikveh Israel. But then I got out of it through my experiences and through everything which I went through and heard. My parents were Orthodox Jews. I became non-religious. Actually, I said I'm throwing off all religion, and I said I don't believe in God at all. And I wasn't what you may call an atheist. At that time, we have to understand, this is now moving on to 45, we suddenly heard all what happened in Europe, the Holocaust. And the first survivors arrived, and they told the horror stories, and it has a terrific impact on us. And in 1945, I was then 16 already. Palestine was then occupied by the British. They had the mandate over Palestine, and the British played over a game. Sometimes they supported the Zionist cause, which they did mostly, but when the war broke out of their own interest, also they were concerned to have the support of the Arab people. Also, oil has played also a role, and so they decided to clamp down on immigration and to shut the borders. So the Holocaust survivors wanted to come to Palestine, and the borders were shut. So it was a terrific feelings against the British. Actually, it was a real hatred and different underground organization, basically using different levels of terror against the British. British had at the time. They tried to suppress it, and at times we had up to 100,000 soldiers in the country. But it went on. It was also outcry in the world. Here comes the Holocaust survivors come in, and they were sending ships with them, and the British were intercepting them and sending them first to Cyprus, and then eventually sent them even back to Europe. That it caused quite a lot of sympathy in the world towards the Jewish cause. But so there was a lot of criticism of the British in the world, and they felt, what can they do? They were a bit in between. The Palestinians, of course, they were concerned about the Zionist cause of building up a land there, having a state within them, and they were afraid. And so eventually the British decided, we give it all over to the United Nations. You do with this. And the United Nations sent a committee inquiry, and they came back with a recommendation to divide up the land into Palestinian and Jewish. The Jewish part of it mostly have accepted that recommendation, but the Palestinians felt that they cheated because this is their land. And they were the majority in the division, supposed to be half and half or more for the Jewish than the Arab. So straight away started hostilities, violence. And now my part in it. Even before that, I was very much involved in somewhat in underground, mildly underground training with weapons. But I wanted to be very much active against the British. I had a strong hatred against the British that they don't allow the Holocaust survivors. I mean, actually wanted to join some of the extreme underground, but I did not succeed to my happiness, because I would have been involved in something which I would have been regretting. The feeling at the time in the world, at that time Britain was still a big empire, and I don't know, they just now had given independence to India. But they were all over the world, and they had big interests. And I had the view that the Britain would never let us be in peace here, because we are a small little group of people, and all the Arab world, and they were concerned about the interests of oil supply and so on. That's why I wanted to join the undergrounds fighting the British. But as soon as the British have decided to accept the partition, and they said, this was in 47, in November 1947, the British decided that they will accept it if that's what they want, and they said they will leave in May 48. They will leave the country altogether. On the day when it was decided, we were listening at the debate on the United Nations if they will accept our plan of the division of the country, and when it was decided, there was great rejoicing among the Jewish population. It was the first time they may have a state after the destruction of the Jewish state in Palestine about 2,000 years ago. But even on the first day, there was already hostility. I can still very well remember. After getting up in the morning after that day, we heard that there was a bus coming from Jerusalem, and it was attacked, and there's casualties. And so from this moment on, straight away, hostility started. And the British played kind of, sometimes they supported the Jews, sometimes they supported the Palestinian, but mostly they kept their hand away, so you fight it out among yourself, kind of, And there was a fight going on to grab a power position. So, and that from this time on started the tragedy of the Nakba, because I mean, as soon as started the fighting, so if the Jews managed to conquer a village, or they expelled them, or they were making them frightened to leave the things, and so it was. So they took possession of it, and I straight away wanted to join the military action, and there was a kind of emerging Israeli army, which was not legal recognized by the British, but they were in practice an army, and that was in February 1948. The State of Israel was founded in May 1948. So I took part then with different military actions. I had a view that we are fighting for if we will not fight, we will experience here a second Holocaust, which may have been not objective, but that's what I felt at the time. So this is as far as I can tell you from on your question. I participated in several actions as a soldier in the 33 battalion from Alexandroni, the brigade Alexandroni, and I wanted to be active. I felt my family was not there. I was alone. Nobody will not be missing me so much if I will die. So I always volunteered to be where there would be more dangerous action, but I was starting to get more and more troubled behavior. I mean, war brings bad feelings in people. I would say most of us have the lower nature in us, but it's controlled through society, also through the laws of the land, but suddenly in war it brings out feelings which we usually control them, and some people more and some others less. They do things which they would never do in normal life. And this bothered me, because I seen some of my comrades doing things like molesting innocent people. I heard them also that murdering innocent people. I haven't seen myself that an innocent man was murdered, but I heard about it. And there's one occasion which is as recently also came into the highlight. There was a little town which is called Tantura, and I may say a little before that. Before that, we were in action in that little town called Kfar Saba, and we were surrounded by Palestinians, and some of my comrades were killed, and some were wounded, and we had to withdraw, and we left. We had to leave some of the wounded behind. Now we heard afterwards that those wounded comrades were killed and their bodies mutilated. And it brought a lot of rage in my comrades. And then when we came into Tantura, in the next town which we conquered, we heard that some of comrades have, which I seen also, they have taken away some of the Palestinians which were gathered there, but I didn't know what they were doing with them. But I heard later that they were murdered, and I was very, very, very worried, very uneasy about it. Now we're starting to do the same thing which people have done to us as Jews and to our persecution. And I had a feeling I want to live by morals. I want to, even though I didn't always succeed, but I want to live, I think I want to live a good life. And I said, well, it's no point just go on living in a world where everyone is kind of a beast to the others. And so I want to live for things which is worth living for. And so I was bothered by those things. But a change came to me eventually when we conquered the town of Leda. And the town of Leda was conquered, and all the population were ordered to leave the town. And I told about that in other occasion. It was a change in me. Suddenly I seen those masses of people going through the checkpoint which we were commanded to man. And they were search for valuables, and that reminded me very much the time when I was a child, a 10-year-old boy. In the meantime, I was 19, and it is and I could very well identify with those people suddenly going out, which I could remember all that things which we have experienced. Now I asked myself, is that what we're going to do because we want to live here in this country? We're going to do, we are putting a whole people from the land, and on top of it, we've seen cruelties, which actually do not, the order to leave the town was done by the command. But there was cruelties going on from colleagues, and even though at times we protested, but it was very, very, very weak. And I think it is, and and then that always excuse, we're fighting still for our existence. We are in a war, and what can we do? But this started a process for me that I felt in the end I cannot participate in that. Yes, we want to live, also we have a right to live, also live to live in this country, but by being here, I'm getting into a conflict with the other people, and then all this cruelty, which I felt I will not participate in that, and I decided eventually to leave the country. 53, I left the country. My searching, I was feeling, looking for answer for mankind, kind of that they can live in peace and not in hurting one another. And I tried different experimentation, or I belonged at one point to a Marxist, Leninist groups, but I could not. I felt a disappointment, and it did not satisfactory. But eventually I found a group of people which it's a long story to tell, but I found faith in Jesus, that Jesus is not the one which I experienced, which was represented to me, to the many people which persecuted the Jewish people and all the wars which they had, all the cruelty and all that. Jesus is completely different. He represents love, brotherliness, justice, purity, and he is also now calling people, and this changed my life. I became a believer in Jesus, and I found a group of people who felt the same. He wanted to follow Jesus' teachings and not compromising with evil, and being non-violent, living for justice and brotherhood, and sharing everything together, which I am now 50 years a member of. A member of our community has written a book, Stories of Forgiveness. And for people who have experienced great hurt and still find a way to forgive. I was asked to write my story as well, which I did. That came in the hand of a man here called Shlaim, and he read it, and he wrote an amazing letter to me. He said, I'm coming from the town of Lida, and my father was one of the few residents who stayed still there. And it moved me to hear about you, what you're telling about it. Now, to make the story short, it was possible then at one point to meet this father in Lydda. I came over from England where I lived, and I met him, and I could ask him personally for forgiveness. And not only that, he led me to the places which I knew, which I remember still, where the people from Lydda were expelled from. And he told me the suffering, the hardship which they experience, and I felt we were so close to him. And he embraced me, and I embraced him, and we had it brought some healing to my memories of this time. It meant a lot to me. I didn't even know that I carried this to the degree that I carried this experience as a horse experience which I had. So this was very, very important happening to hear. And I was very happy to come to the Sabir conference and tell my story to the people. And it made me also think that through maybe forgiveness has a power. That I know we hurting one another always. We're hurting one another, and if I'm doing an injustice to you, you feel angry at me, and you want to retaliate, and it starts a process of more violent, either by feeling or by things, and somehow to break that cycle. I ask for forgiveness, not thinking about what you done to me, but what I did to you. Ask for forgiveness. I was wrong. I hurt you. Please forgive me. And somehow, this also may start a process. I say may start a process that the other person which I'm asking for forgiveness may start to think, well, maybe I wasn't so innocent either. And I have also to ask for forgiveness. And there it becomes a process of healing. Now this is on a personal level. It can be also expanded on a national. So I think forgiveness is a message, which is a powerful message. Beside of that, when you ask for forgiveness, it relieves you. And also when you accept forgiveness, when you forgive on a person, if you don't have hatred nor bitterness against the person, it heals you yourself. So it's only a win-win situation. And people don't often go around with that for a lifetime. So it made me think about that. I wish it would be done much more in this world. Even the forgiving part is important. This is what I said at the end, because maybe it is also a start of a solution. This is what I'm telling my story personally, the parallels from my Holocaust experience and what happened here. To add to it, when I came out of the army and I was telling my story to other people, what we doing, there was a denial. People wouldn't want to. They said, this is Arab propaganda. There was no openness to hear the truth. And it is maybe it is psychological that through that they would have to make amends. They're saying there's an injustice, and they didn't feel like that is what they wanted to do it. Also, it's easier in wartime. It's easy always to demonize the enemy, And if you see him as a human being, then you can't hate him. And so, whatever the reason, it was a denial. It's a great part, is it still today? Is a denial among the Jews in this, that what was done in the time of Nakba. I'm not saying that they were only doing that. There was the Arabs have done also atrocities at the time. I don't know, recently, I left Israel already 55 years ago, but we have to face our own guilt. That's my point. We have to face our own guilt and from there start a process of reconciliation.